Hello, my name is Savannah Garrett. I'm 24 years old. I'm currently enrolled at Liberty University in the Bachelor's of Psychology program. I'm passionate about advocacy for incarcerated juveniles and juveniles in foster care. I'm specifically passionate about working with ages 15 to 18 because in the juvenile detention center, juveniles are only given the chance to go back to the juvenile detention center when they reoffend if they are under the age of 18. After 18, they go to the adult detention center. There is a crucial age between 15 to 18-year-olds to be able to help steer them in the right direction and give them the support that they need. Also, with foster children, when they turn 18, they are no longer considered wards of the state. Therefore, they do not have the support that they need post-high school, and that leads to a homeless youth problem. I would love to help in the foster care system give students the tools that they need, students and children the tools that they need post-high school, whether that's planning their career or planning college. I would love to help them advocate for themselves in the next part of their life and support them through that. I believe that this degree can help me because it will give me the tools needed to understand trauma, understand where behaviors come from, and that they come from a thought process and experiences. It would also help me give emotional regulation skills. I would love to be certified to teach full-time, and specifically in juvenile detention centers and alternative schools. I would like to be certified in English, math, and special education. During this role, I would like to advocate for individualized education plans and improve behavior through emotional regulation skills. I would like to teach students how to communicate their emotions and how to think through certain things that they are processing in their lives. I would also love to be trauma informed, as I believe that every adult that works with students should have knowledge of trauma to help them process what they're going through. I also believe it is important for students to have safe relationships with adults in their lives, and I would love to be that. My research topic is juvenile detention centers and facilities, and my question is there a relationship between learning disabilities and juvenile detention centers? And what other factors besides learning disabilities might contribute to this issue? One source that I read was the Learning Disabilities to Juvenile Detention Pipeline, a case study written by Christopher Mallett. This fits into my interest because it relates to my research question of what is the relationship between learning disabilities and juvenile delinquency. In the article, Mallett states a study was conducted to review the outcomes for a population of youthful offenders in 2 juvenile courts in the Midwest, and it was found that youthful offenders with learning disabilities, when compared with non-disabled youth offenders, were more likely to be suspended from school, were adjudicated delinquent at younger ages, and were more frequently held in detention centers. Possible factors of this include school failure, susceptibility, and differential treatment. A lot of times in schools, there's a lack of referrals for learning disabilities. When a student doesn't get what they need through the referral and diagnosis, this creates a lack of resources for the student. Therefore, they are not getting the help they need within the classroom. And when a child is disengaged because they feel like they are unable to learn or they're having difficulty learning, this can lead to behavior outbursts and emotional outbursts. The way that schools typically deal with this is to isolate that child in order to help curb their behavior. However, what happens is when this becomes a pattern, their case ends up going to the juvenile court, and the juvenile court uses the juvenile detention center as a behavior reformation program. However, this is not the most effective practice because it actually leads to reoffending. Because when a student feels like they are isolated, it can hurt their emotional and social development. In the next source that I read was Who Will Educate Me? Using the Americans with Disabilities Act to Improve Educational Access for Incarcerated Juveniles with Disabilities, written by Lauren Koster. This article talks about how many facilities that are secure are also restricting education. In the last article, we talked about how when students feel disengaged, it leads to outbursts in behavior. Therefore, education is highly needed for rehabilitation. So this is illustrating the idea that when children are not given educational rights that they deserve within the juvenile system, it actually exacerbates the issue because whenever they are released, then they are not at grade level. They become disengaged again. They become isolated again, and they go back to the detention center. Therefore, education is a part of rehabilitation, but this also reveals a validity issue within my study, because it will cause me to ask questions within the juvenile facilities of what their educational processes are and how they are adhering to individualized education plan protocols. I would prefer to research this using qualitative data. In the textbook, Introduction to Research, Less Fright, More Insight, a customized version of research methods, Are You Equipped? Crawford defines qualitative research by stating, qualitative research uses inductive logic and the various qualitative approaches. Researchers use qualitative methods to seek insight through in-depth collection of information that may be subjective, hopefully with hypotheses emerging from the in-depth information. I believe that archival data and interviews are the best way to research this topic, and they heavily rely on observation, so they are qualitative. I also think through the use of these that there might be other environmental factors revealed, like school absences, lack of higher education in families, lack of family involvement in the student academics, and maybe overall stress in the juveniles. A strength of archival data is that it can reveal more information about that research topic. In the textbook, Crawford was describing a student who was using archival data. She used existing records by collecting the records collected by the university and was able to examine variables that she had not originally considered because the information was available. Archival data will have a lot of information available from public records within the juvenile system, such as socioeconomic status, neighborhoods, gang affiliation, all of the information that the police will take whenever a juvenile is admitted into the facility during their intake form. The drawback of using this method is privacy. Sheriffs often do not release information on minors to protect them. Therefore, the only public information available would be cases where juveniles were charged as an adult or where they are 18. Therefore, there's a limited amount of resources which could negatively impact the research project. Also, it is hard to use observational data to pinpoint causation. Crawford states it's very important to know that a correlation does not include cause and effect. It simply shows whether or not things vary together. Therefore, because of a lack of testable hypothesis, there can be a drawback with this method. However, with interviews, there are some positives as well. So conducting interviews within those affected can help foster empathy and can help give background information that we otherwise might not have known. And participants might feel more comfortable because it's an issue that is personal to them. There are also facts such as body cam and use of facts that have been proven within each case. There can be a lack of validity because of testable hypothesis and the likelihood of social desirability. In the textbook, the author states, in face-to-face interviews, the characteristics of a researcher could influence how people respond to questions. Finally, participants may answer in such a way as to be viewed positively by the research. This is known as social desirability. So there could be a likelihood that participants might answer based on how they think the researcher wants them to answer. My research plan would be to first look at Jerry Falwell Library for information on cases and subjects regarding juvenile detention centers. I would then contact law enforcement to set up a time to ask expert advice of how to legally conduct this study. I would find archival records and look for archival records through public records of each juvenile and look for factors such as socioeconomic, learning disabilities, gang affiliation, families, or drugs. In the publication manual of the American Psychological Association, they state socioeconomic status encompasses not only income but also education attainment, occupational prestige, and subjective perceptions of social status and social class. Therefore, this should be a factor as well. I would find everything from the archival data and find the most commonly observed factors and compile those and list them. I would then create questionnaire for 3 groups. such as judges, lawyers, police officers, people that work with these juveniles. I would write a questionnaire for those affected, such as the juveniles that have been incarcerated themselves, and I would also write a questionnaire for families and neighbors. After that, I would ask the newspaper to post this ad, and I would interview each group. I would find common responses and write a conclusion based on common factors listed between both the archival research and the interviews. Drawbacks to this could be a lack of participation, and also scheduling could take time. Therefore, archival research and the interviews could be time consuming. However, I believe this is the best way to conduct the study because of the use of empathy and having that background information needed that we might not otherwise know. In conclusion, I'm researching relationship between juvenile detention and learning disabilities and what other factors contribute to that. I would do this through the use of archival data and interviews. My goal is to help understand and empathize with those affected by this issue, and that is a positive part of my research plan. Drawbacks could include privacy breaching, a lack of participants, and time consuming. There could also be validity issues such as a lack of testable hypothesis and the likelihood of social desirability. However, I still believe this is the best way to conduct this research plan. Thank you so much for your time.